Hello and welcome to this week's UK Gaming Network podcast. I'm Zoidberg. In the next couple of months, 2 new gaming options will be arriving, competing for our attention, and the first of these, Apple Arcade, launched last week. If you aren't familiar with what Apple Arcade is, it's a service that gives subscribers access to over 50 games that they can download and play at their leisure, all for the measly sum of just $4.99 a month. The games are all advert and microtransaction free and can be played across a number of Apple devices. We've been playing them on an Apple TV, with a PlayStation 4 controller connected via Bluetooth. It's hard to turn down such a good offer, but before you start saying, but mobile games are rubbish, what's the point? I should point out that these aren't all what you'd label as casual games. The likes of Capcom, Ubisoft, Square Enix and Sega have all contributed to the launch lineup, and there are new games from great indie developers like WayForward and Clay Entertainment as well. With so many games available, it's inevitable that some aren't that great. There have been a number of titles that we've downloaded, played once and then deleted. And then there's Choo Choo Rocket Universe and Frogger in Toy Town. 2 games where the developers clearly didn't understand the simplistic brilliance of the original games that they're based on. Although it's an impressive start, especially as the first month is free, there are some reservations and niggles. It's worth pointing out that when Apple refers to games as exclusive, they actually mean that they won't be available on Android. Some of these games have actually already been released on consoles or are coming soon. Performance on some games was also an issue, particularly when playing for long periods, but that could simply be an issue with our hardware. It's also disappointing that it's only compatible with certain Bluetooth controllers. The Xbox One and PS4 controllers work fine, but if you use them on the original console in the meantime, you'll have to unpair it and then pair it again every time you want to play. For now, it's well worth a look. Hopefully there will be a steady stream of new games to play to keep us subscribed. To help you get started, here's what we consider to be the top 5 games that you can play right now on Apple Arcade. Number 5, Mutation. Adventure game fans are particularly well served by what's available, with Neocab and Oceanhorn 2 also impressing, but it was the strange, enchanting world of Mutation that we liked the most. This is the game that puts you in the shoes of a 15-year-old girl who travels to a mysterious island in order to care for her grandfather. You'll get to talk to the peculiar people that live there and interact with all the bizarre creatures. You even have to create and tend to a garden, learning about where to plant each seed and how to maintain them. It looks great and managed to draw us in with the oddness of it all, but it kept us playing because we cared about its characters. It's also available on consoles if you fancy giving it a try. Number 4, Exit the Gungeon. Sequels are normally more of the same, with the odd improvement or new feature, but not Exit the Gungeon. This rips out all the features that made the original a fantastic twin-stick shooter, with screen-filling volleys of bullets, and places them into a 2D platformer. The results take a little getting used to, but it doesn't take long for that one more go feeling to return. Your gun changes randomly during play, which forces you to learn each one's strengths and weaknesses, and the boss fights are challenging encounters that keep you on your toes. There's an incredible feeling of satisfaction when you manage to beat one for the first time. Number 3, Sayonara Wild Hearts. While most rhythm games are content to give you a selection of songs to play through, Sayonara Wild Hearts goes one step further, by making you play through an entire album in order. Each track tells a story, but each one is also a small part of the wider picture, and as you make your way through the game, the true story unfolds. Of course, you could just ignore that and play through the levels just for the fun of it, and marvel at the fantastic pink and purple imagery that flashes before you. Whichever way you play it, it's a challenging and enjoyable ride packed with new ideas and invention at every turn. Number 2, What the Golf. Advertising itself as a golf game for people who hate golf, What the Golf would make a great gaming double bill with Untitled Goose Game, and not just because they share a similar visual style. The primary aim is to make you laugh as much as possible while playing it. Instead of striking a ball, you might find yourself propelling the golfer himself down the course, or a football, or a car, or even a house. And every time you think it's run out of ideas, another section opens up and proves that it hasn't. It's frequently hilarious, but that comes at a cost. Even though each hole has 3 different challenges, it won't take long to see them all. A few score-based challenges would have been a nice incentive to return. Number 1, Mini Motorways. Not all games are meant to get the adrenaline pumping. Some are designed to be played in a state of almost zen-like relaxation, and Mini Motorways is one such game. It's the follow-up to the similar Mini Metro, but where that saw you running an underground rail network, this puts you in charge of the roads. The gameplay is very simple. Just connect the roads between houses and buildings of the same colour as the game slowly zooms out. Because everything appears randomly, no 2 games are ever the same, and that makes it incredibly addictive. After dozens of games, we're still discovering new tactics and techniques, and hopefully we'll soon work out a way of placing traffic lights that's actually useful. If you've been playing on Apple Arcade, let us know what you think. Time now for this week's reviews. The success of Dark Souls has spawned its own subgenre of action RPGs, and Code Vein has been one of the more hotly anticipated ones of recent months. Sadly though, it doesn't live up to the expectations. After Sekiro gave the genre a kick up the backside earlier this year, this feels like a massive step backwards. This is, in part, down to the fact that there's very little that's appealing about the presentation, bar a couple of nice creature designs. We've seen this type of ruined city dozens of times before, and the anime characters, ironically, lack character. It's the gameplay that disappoints the most though. The Souls games are addictive because every time you die, you feel a compulsion to get right back into the action, but here it just frustrates you to the point that I wanted to turn it off. It also isn't helped by the AI companions that tag along from time to time. Most of the time you can simply back up and let them do the fighting for you, which simply goes against the whole point of playing the game in the first place. While we're on the subject of games inspired by Dark Souls, we come to The Surge 2, which finally makes good on the promise of the original. It's clear from the opening movie that this is going to be the best game so far from developer Deck 13. The futuristic setting instantly makes it stand out from the crowd, and although the map isn't huge, exploring the city reveals plenty of secrets and shortcuts to help your navigation. The developers have clearly listened to the criticism of the first game, as there are fewer difficulty spikes than before. Not that it's ever easy. It features the same excellent combat system as the first game, allowing you to target specific parts of the body and harvest them for salvage, but it all feels a lot smoother and more responsive than before. The gameplay loop of fighting enemies and gathering upgrades builds not only your power but also your confidence for tackling more advanced enemies. Progress may be slow, but it's never dull, and it makes for a game that's easy to recommend. ReadySet Heroes is a competitive dungeon crawler from Robot Entertainment, the makers of Orcs Must Die, and it's fun in short bursts, but it feels short on content. There are only two modes of play, one for online and the other for local. Both follow essentially the same structure, where you fight through a series of random dungeons either on your own or with a friend, and collect loot at the end. The difference is that online, after a few dungeons, you're thrown into a brawl at the end against other human players. This can be great fun, but getting into an online game took far too long. It has all the potential of a decent single player game as well, but sadly the single player mode feels like an underdeveloped afterthought. It's a shame as the presentation is good, with a nice selection of characters to choose from, and fun gameplay, but at the moment it's all crippled by a lack of online players and too little to do when playing on your own. Time for a closer look at an old game that we've been playing recently with our Retro Game of the Week. Cruise for a Corpse came from Delphine Software and was released for the Atari ST, Amiga and PC back in 1991. It's a point-and-click murder mystery inspired by the works of Agatha Christie. As you explore the decks of a ship searching for clues and talking to each passenger, you'll discover that everyone has a motive for the killing. Every time you discover an important piece of information, the clock would advance by 10 minutes, meaning that previously empty cupboards could now conceal an important item. The central mystery was compelling enough to keep you playing, and we particularly enjoyed interacting with the well-rounded characters. It was one of the first games from the developer to utilise the graphical mix of 3D characters and static backgrounds, the same system that they would go on to use for both Another World and Flashback. If it's a game that slipped you by, or you just want to remind yourself of its charms, we'll have a full playthrough up on our channel very soon. Look out for it. And that wraps up the show for another week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have memories of playing Cruise for a Corpse, or just want to give us your opinion on anything that we've discussed, drop us a line in the comments. We'll be back next week with a look at the Mega Drive Mini, as well as reviews of Ghost Recon Breakpoint and Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. Make sure you give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss it. Also follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at UKGN Network. Until then, thanks for listening. See you soon.